Hello, and welcome to our Sewing Sangha. I'm Cheryl Dyson, and we're here to learn how to make a rakusu by hand. So this rakusu will be in the Soto Zen tradition, most specifically from the Upaya Zen Center in the lineage of Roshi John Halifax. You'll find a variety of different short videos that will give you how to start the process of making a rakusu, the different stitches, and the construction techniques. You might like to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell so that you'll be sure that you're alerted to any of the new videos as they come along. So let's get started. When you think about making a rakusu, any new project, you're going to need supplies. And probably the first supplies you think about are needle and thread. So John James needles, the quilting style, will be the ones you want to look for. Now, there are many different needles out there: embroidery, millinery, upholstery, just the sky's the limit. Now, you also might discover that you have maybe a Sewing Notions box in the back of the closet. Maybe you've inherited something from a grandmother or a mother, and when you pull all those notions out, thinking, "Yay, I can just get started," I'd like to caution you to take a look at the quality of those materials. Needles, in particular, can become tarnished and even rusty. So I would highly recommend that of the things to buy brand new would be a package of quilting needles. So these are a very good quality, like I said, and will give you a variety of lengths and eye widths so that you can be successful. The other thing will be like looking at threads. I personally love working with silk thread for projects like this. Kinkame is my favorite brand, but Clover is also another good brand for silk threads. These are both Japanese made and very high quality. For the Clover brand, if you go to their website or go to places that sell different sewing notions, you'll find a wide variety of sewing notions that Clover makes. And you can pretty much count on all of them being high quality. So those are a great option for you. Now, there still are other types of thread. The all-purpose thread from Coates and Clark is one of the examples. And Gooderman is also a really good brand. This particular spool is a polyester thread, but there are a variety of different threads that they make as well, cotton and linen. Now, when we get to our episode about the fabrics, I'll revisit threads because there are some guidelines for what kind of thread goes with what kind of fabric. So I'll help you with that, making those decisions as you go along. Now, a fun thing about maybe unearthing the sewing supplies from days gone by will be these really fun wooden spools that you may have inherited a handful of these. Now, these are great for basting. So when we've got our black fabric, they'll be basting the pieces together before stitching them with the black threads. It holds things in place and is a really good step to be sure that you take. So you want a contrast in color. And so these more antique threads are a great choice for that. And the reason why is thread doesn't last forever. And thread can get kind of, not so good. And you'll notice that a thread like this has been around for a long time and it snaps very easily. So this thread is not good for construction of clothing. You certainly wouldn't want to put it in your sewing machine, but it is excellent for using as a basting thread. So those are our threads, which is great. Now, where do we keep our threads? We have needles and threads and pins, and pin cushions are a very important part as well. So as we take a look at having pin cushions and quilting pins, and in the instructions and in the demonstrations, you'll see pinning some of the pieces together You can get little cute little boxes like this that have colorful pins, or you might already have some dressmaker pins that you can use. And now this little tomato has seen better days, but I just love it because my grandmother had it, and I have a little nostalgia here. But it's really also good to demonstrate these little dangles here, the little strawberry and little chili pepper. And what these are for, they're filled with like rosin or gravel. And what you want to do that after you've been sewing for a while, you want to take one of the little strawberry and just run your pin through it up and down many times. And that will help to sharpen the pin and the needle and to take any burrs off the very tip of it. So that'll be something that also helps to keep your sewing smooth so that you don't snag the fabric, and to be able to do the sewing with ease without fatiguing your hands. So those are really a good thing to know about. Another thing that you'll want to consider is beeswax for your thread. So when you're taking a look at some of these threads, you might want to condition the thread and draw it through a beeswax like this. And that will help also to prevent tangles and to prevent any unnecessary like snagging and that kind of thing for a thread. And like I said, when we go to our episode about fabric, I'll talk about these things again, as well as we're doing the construction, then I'll remind you about some of the helps that you can use. Now, when we're talking about pins, one of the things that one of the women in our cohort told me about were these little clips, and to use little clips instead of straight pins. And I just love these things. They're very cute and very fun to use. They're great for kids as well because they don't pinch you. It's like they're pretty easy to work with. And as you are clipping the different pieces together prior to sewing them, then it's really handy when you have a long strip that you need to sew, that if it's filled with straight pins, you might stick yourself as you're trying to sew. So these are very handy as well. And when we get to the section on putting the strips together and how to piece them and how to hold them together prior to sewing, I'll remind you about these or demonstrate how they're used. So that's a fun addition to your sewing kit. Now, one thing that I want to highly recommend that you get, and you may notice that I have a grid here of this drafting paper or grid paper. And this particular tablet is 8.5 by 11. It's really pretty inexpensive. The paper is thinner than regular copy paper, I believe. And it's very helpful to have paper like this. Now, you may already have a friend or, if one of your kids is into drawing or their anime or the things that they may already have this. A pen, you can ask them if you could borrow 5 or 6 sheets of this. And as we look at the techniques for creating the strips for the front of the rakusu with the different tucks, and I'm sure you've taken a peek at that and thought, oh, how am I going to do that? I have a technique that I can show you that will make that easy to create and line up so that you can make sure that the work that you're doing is going to stay straight and level, which is a really good thing to have. You don't want to have any wardrobe malfunctions during in the zendo, and you certainly want to feel comfortable wearing your rakusu, that it hangs straight and all of the lines are straight and precise. So with that in mind, with the grid is how to measure these things, because you're going to be doing quite a bit of measuring and quite a bit of marking to be able to be sure that your stitches are straight and that they're going to be level and even. So these are some of the measuring tools that are handy to have. A tape measure. Be sure that you have one that is in good condition. Sometimes older tape measures, actually, think I have one right over here. Let's see here. Um, when you take a look at this. See, it's not bad here, but on the back, it's all the ink is coming off because the little metal tab has come apart, come off. After many years of just some general tape measuring. So having a good quality tape measure is important. And I really like these little measures. Now, you don't need to buy both of them, but I find that using either one of them to be very helpful for some of these measurements that we'll be making going forward. Some of the seam allowances are, only you might have a half inch or even a quarter inch. And these can give you that more accurate measurements as you go along so that you can measure your seam allowances. It's different than working with a paper pattern. And so that way you can measure and mark as you go along. And for marking, for right now, be thinking about a white colored pencil. Now you may get your adult coloring book supplies out and find like the Barrel Prismacolor, a white marker, a white pencil. I think Crayola has those as well. So, if you want to raid your raid your kids or your grandkids' stash of colors, then maybe you can grab the white one. Be sure that you have a pencil sharpener so you can keep the tip nice and sharp. The most of the marking that we'll be doing will be on on a side that won't show, so you don't have to worry about the little white that's left over. For any marking that we do from the front, then I'll show you a couple of different techniques that can help prevent having white marks on the front of your rakusu. So that's an important tool. The other one will be taking a look at a ruler, a hard ruler. Because once you've measured along for the seam allowance, sometimes you'll want a sharp line, or before cutting, you'll want a nice sharp line. So I like this particular brand of ruler because if you can see, it has a raised area, so you can grip it very easily, as well as pressing down very easily as well. Because once you're cutting or marking, have you ever had that happen where you have the ruler in place and you're trying to mark and all of a sudden, and I have to start over, I have to get a new page. So I really like this particular one. And it's also handy to have a small tape measure like this that is this little rotary, like a little retractable guy, so that you can, and mostly of what I use this little measure for is to double check my work. When we get to the episode where we are actually cutting the strips from our fabric, then we really want to take a hint from our woodworking friends who say measure twice and cut once. Maybe measure 2, 3, 4, 5 times and cut once. Because we want to make sure that we don't have to start over. We want to do things in order and not and the goal too is to help keep you from being frustrated and and concerned, especially when we really kind of have a tighter time frame to accomplish this goal. All righty, so measurement is great, and following measurement will be to cut the pieces, and so we'll have to take a look at what kind of tools do we need for cutting and trimming and all of the stuff. So now when you take a look at your sewing basket that maybe you already have, you might find that you have fabric shears available to you. Now, one of the running jokes in sewing circles is, somebody uses mom's sewing shears for something other than fabric, and she will run after you and rightly so. Um, Fabric shears are terrific. They keep their sharp edge. They cut through fabric beautifully, and you never want to use them for anything but fabric. So I'm super lucky that I inherited a pair of Italian Geiger fabric shears, and you hear that? That nice. There's just, and when they cut through fabric, it's just such a satisfying little, and they cut so well. Now you can certainly find other brands of fabric shears. You don't have to buy an expensive pair. And from what I understand, the Fiskars makes a what they're calling a Geiger pair, the chromed fabric shear. But from what I've heard, they're not as good as these. So, but that's okay. You know, it's actually okay if they're adequate for the job and give you a good clean cut, because you like, it's kind of like drawing the line with the fabric. Remember, you know, if the ruler gets wobbly and I get a wonky line, that's bad. If I'm cutting but the fabric, it keeps catching, or one of the things to watch out for too is shears that aren't sharp all the way along, because if you only have a sweet spot for where it cuts, then before or after that sweet spot, you might get tears or snags, and you definitely don't want that. And when we're making the rakusu, um, you'll discover that we have some thin strips that we'll need to, a fabric that we'll need to cut. So we really want to make sure those strips are nice and clean and have a really crisp edge, because that'll make sewing them much easier and will give you that crisp, nice line and look that you want. Now, a couple of snips are a great idea as well. These little guys, these are very sharp. I actually use these for making paper snowflakes, but as well as different sewing tasks. And they're nice to have handy. These little shears, these little scissors I love for simply when you're doing your sewing, you're going to have little places to trim, you know, and you're at the end of the row, you make a knot and then you trim the excess. So these are nice to have just handy, you know, next to you as you're sewing. Which actually reminds me that as you're doing your sewing and find these little extra, you know, extra stray threads, be sure that you police those up. Make sure that you keep those together. I usually have, I didn't bring a little bowl, but I usually have a little bowl or a little jar that I'll just stash those in, because some people will, oh, you know, they're great. It would be good for birds to make nests. But bird people, the experts on birds, will tell you that unfortunately, if mama and papa bird make a nest and use thread like this, babies can get their feet and little toes caught in the threads, and that can be bad for them. So we want to police those up and make sure that they don't get out into the environment and harm any little baby birds. All righty. Oh, and the last cutting tool I'd like to share with you is this guy. Is a rotary cutter. For those of you who are already expert at quilting or do piecework with that, you may already have a rotary cutter. There are different styles out there available. And this is a terrific way to make these strips, because there's not really a need for a pattern with the Rakusu pieces and parts. You simply are going to be measuring and then cutting a straight line. And so that's exactly what they're for. They cut a straight line. Now you'll need a self-healing mat and a good ruler to be able to use one of these. You can't just eyeball it. You have to be able to go along the edge of the ruler, and the healing mat will protect your surface, your whatever table or work area you're using. And you would click this open, and you'll see that, let me see if I can, that the blade comes out so that it makes it available for you to be able to cut. And then you want to push the button and bring that blade back in. So, and it's a really important thing to do because I'm so tempted. I've done this before, just leave it open like this. And if I reach and forget, you know, that's not a good thing because they're very sharp and you could cut yourself. And that's the last thing you want. You might be putting your sweat and tears into your rakusu. We don't want to put any blood in there. So, I'm sorry, that's probably, sorry for anyone with a sensitive tummy about that. So at any rate, this is a nice thing to have if you're interested in that, or if you're already doing quilting and sewing. Otherwise, dressmaker shears will work just fine. Okay, so let's go back to the other camera. All right. And so all of your supplies are really great to have available to you. It's kind of like I watch cooking shows and they have the term mise en place, where they gather all their materials. They have all their herbs and a little thing here with salt and pepper or whatever, and everything's ready to be able to put together for cooking. The same thing goes here for making our rakusu. You'll want to have your supplies ready and at hand, and that way you'll have less frustration of trying to, squirrel around and find the individual items. Now, there'll be a link in the description below that will give you a page that will have a list of these supplies, as well as some places that you can look to buy them if you need to. And so I'll make that available for you to be able to find easily. And the other thing I'd encourage you to do is to create a organizational plan for your sewing tools. Keep everything together, because when we do our sewing circles, especially if you're attending the Jukai class, take a break and come in and we start our sewing circle. You don't want to be looking around, opening your sewing box and, going through to find things. And that's something I've done for years. I'll think, oh, I'd love to maybe do the coloring, that would be so soothing and self-care and restful. And then I'll find myself digging around, looking for the colors, looking for the papers, looking for this, that, or the other thing. And then by the time I'm ready to start, I have maybe half the time to be able to actually do my project or do my hobby. So we have a certain amount of time that we might have maybe scheduling for ourselves to work on this. So we want to make sure that there's something to just grab and go, if you will. And several different ways we can do that. Something as simple really as a Ziploc bag to keep your at least the paper, the fabric pieces in, and you could have a few items, other notions in a bag like this. I really like having a little bag. Can have different little cosmetic bags that can have. That might be a place for your little ruler, a place for the thread that you're using. Seam ripper. I'm so sorry, but I should add that to the list, having a nice seam ripper so that you can correct any mistakes. And a little, your different supplies can go in there. The other maybe quintessential storage for sewing notions is the butter cookie tin. And it's fun to see people, I grabbed good butter cookies, I love them, and you open and it's filled with threads and scissors and sewing notions. So that might be a fun thing to store your things in. There's also a basket to put your cloth in, your little pin cushion, maybe you find a jar, cute little jar like this to put your clips in, and that way you can stow the basket on your bookcase and then grab it when you're ready to go. So I know these things are probably pretty pretty self-explanatory, and you may have already gotten the gist or gotten the plan for that. But just in case you haven't, it might be these might be some tips that help you out. And I found these boxes. They're Sterilite, and like I said, I'll have a list of where to find this kind of thing and what size. And I actually really love these. And I have a number of these that I've used as project boxes. So I don't know if you were able to do the calligraphy class with Kaz. And so, oh, that was so fun. And again, it was like I was like digging through trying to find a brush and this and that. And so I got one of these and put the calligraphy paper and the piece of felt and the little dish for holding and the ink, bottle of ink and the different brushes. So that way I could put this on the shelf in my closet where I keep a lot of sewing and craft things, and everything was together. So this can be a nice little bin to hold your Rakusu project in, and then you can just grab it and go. So, so like I said, we're very happy to see you here. And if you have any questions or comments, please do leave them in the comments below. If there are things that you need more detail about, I wish you'd go slower about this, or I need to know more about whatever, be sure you leave comments about that, questions and comments, because we'll be very happy to contact you or answer them in the description there. And we'll have other resources available. And again, you might like to like the video and subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you can see the next videos coming up. So what you'll find is a short video on fabric selection and how to mark dark fabric, because we use black. And when I demonstrate the stitches and the different constructions, I'll be using different color fabrics so that you can see it better, because black on black can be a challenge. And we'll talk a little bit about some ways to be sure that we're not straining our eyes as well. And so the construction of that can feel very daunting, I know, because you're reading through the directions and going, whoa, what do I do? So, but we'll be sure that we walk through together step by step. So hopefully at the end of this, we'll have a community of sewers to create this very beautiful embodied practice of creating the Buddha's robe of our Rakusu that we'll have really forever. This is a lifetime project that I think that it's a very satisfying one. And a very meaningful one for everyone. So, and I would love for the process to be equally meaningful and, something that's equally meditative and joyful. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.